Shabbat Shalom. Last week, as some of you may know, I went to visit France to see a friend of mine who I've talked about before on Yom Kippur. And he entered hospice 2 weeks ago. And his wife, very unusual for a French person, was very direct and said, just come now. And so I've spoken about the journey before to Normandy, and when I went to see him in the hospital, he did not look very well. And he was in a ward where he was the youngest person by 2 to 3 decades. And you could tell how much he was going through and his illness. And there's the body part, but there's also the mind part and the spirit part. And my sense of what is my role? I'm a rabbi, but more than anything, a friend and an old friend. And this whole section of the book of Leviticus that we're reading it now is fascinating stories. Some ways the strangest and the least inspiring part of the Torah. But if you look more closely, there is something very profound and moving there as well. And so this week we begin this whole series with the story of the sons of Aaron who rush into the tent of meeting in the middle of the inauguration and offer a strange fire to God, and they die. And it's a parsha that's about catastrophe. Aaron's dancing turns to mourning. And one of the very moving midrashim, it tries to imagine, his wife, on this day when her husband became the high priest and 2 of her sons became his ministers, she also suffered this loss. And Aaron is, the Torah says, silent in his grief, not knowing what to do. His God, the God of the plagues, the God of Sinai, the God of the golden calf, the all-powerful presence who made him go meet his brother Moses and be the voice for him. So they try to find a way to come through all of it. And then next week, Tazria is a parsha that begins to explain this really liminal space where life and death and purity and impurity and human connection and separation and disease and healing all take place. And there's one of the most unusual laws in the Torah where a woman who gives birth, who brings life into the world, becomes impure. And how could that be? And strange cases of illnesses, including the Metzora, the leper, different skin disease than we've ever seen, but who, according to the Torah, in much detail, has to be sent away. And the rabbis say this was someone who had spoken ill of another person. This is why they got this disease. But if this person had this disease, the priest, who was as the doctors of ancient times, would examine them, and then they'd have to rend their clothes and walk out of the camp all alone with their families behind them, their community behind them, crying out, I am impure, I am impure. And finally, the following week, we read the healing of this leper, of the Metzora, and how after a period of time, when he or she had found wholeness again, they were allowed to come back into the camp, return to wholeness, and they would shave their head and make a sacrifice. And one bird was sacrificed, and another bird would just be let free. And that bird would fly over the fields. And the Rabbi, the Ishbitzer, says this is a symbol for love, for the healing power of love, bringing him back into the community, or she back in the community, a new person, reborn. And then we have the stories of how God gives Moses new rules. This is actually how you should approach God. Between the worlds, in that space where purity meets impurity, the sacrifice that is alien and the sacrifice that soars above in the skies. And then we have all the parts, the middle of the Torah, how you should behave. Love your neighbor as yourself. Be holy, for I, your God, am holy. And it's really all a meditation of where does our life happen? And what is it all truly about? And how do we approach God? So when I saw my friend over that week, I saw kind of what made him stronger and what made him weaker. And it was so interesting. What nourished him was when people came to visit him, but somehow it also made him weaker because he was also giving to them as they were giving to him. And it was really hard to see the rhythm of a palliative care hospital, day after day, place of illness. And I remember one day I saw this group of people, a whole family, so many of them, they were out into the hallway. And I wondered what they were there for, and imagined that they were here for a loved one on the edge. And that for that space, our room had turned into a place of forgiveness, of old wounds, and a place of love. In that space where strange offerings are made by friends and family who don't always know how to deal with this, what to bring or what to say, something we all have to confront. But then maybe in the end, the currency of all of it is love. And one cannot explain what happens always in those spaces. And the Baal Shem Tov has a seminal teaching: we give in order to receive, and we receive in order to give. And within all of it is the preciousness of life, birth and bar and bat mitzvahs and all of it, that space that binds our lives together, who we are and what we're doing here. By the end of the weekend, when my friend came home for the weekend, felt like we were again 8 or 10 years old, running around up to mischief. And when I did Shabbat, I told his daughter, who's 8, as I was about to do the blessings, I remember when your father came to our house and my father used to do those same blessings. And my friend, as we were saying the Hebrew prayers, he concentrated and even closed his eyes, and he says, you know what, he's not Jewish, he says, prayer transcends everything, and it really does. Prayer and joy and love, health, life, spirit above all else. Finally, it's not often that I think about this period of the year being a space not only for our religion and Passover, but for the other Abrahamic faiths. And I thought about it because my room in Normandy was opposite the church in the village square. And there were people coming in and out, and it was Easter weekend. And I learned about a tradition that they have, that on Friday, the village bells in France ring every 15 minutes, which is a lot. But they stop ringing the bells for these 2 days, from Friday through the weekend. And it's almost like a silence, a meditation, a period of waiting before Sunday and Monday. Some of his visitors, when they heard I was Jewish and a rabbi, told me all about this in detail. And it's intense. And through all of it, one maybe gets a new beginning for all those who are connecting and moved by it. And this Parshat HaChodesh, this Shabbat, is about starting to bring in the new beginning of Pesach, of freedom, the first of all the months, a new month of leaving behind all the straits. And so many times through our lives and beyond, we rise and we seize the blessings that we each are given, that we receive if our hearts are open, and we give all we have to live in joy and love, knowing that from that place we are given life anew. Shabbat Shalom.